Anyways, I'm Jamie Uyeyama for Our Sports Daily, here with Greg Flammang.
Yep.
Yeah, Greg Flammang. Sorry, I won't get it wrong again. I know people butcher my last name for years and years. Spent many young tournaments in my life with people butchering my name. So we're excited to have you at Our Sport Daily. Love to have you. I know people are obviously familiar with your work at UHND, all the stuff you do on Twitter. You know, he's a great follow on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle again?
At Greg2126.
Yeah, always an awesome follow to do it. And also the number one Kyle Hamilton stan
That's
out
right.
there. Right?
I'm the president.
You are the president.
I dubbed myself the president, and Jackie and Derek said it was okay, so yeah. I kept it. That's what happened.
Well, I mean, that leads right into Kyle Hamilton opting out of the bowl game, which, you know, was unsurprising. You know, I think after that injury and how things kind of could have went wrong, maybe if he played the whole season, he's fine. Maybe he might have looked at it in a different way, but probably shouldn't have, because he's going to be a top 5, top 10 pick no matter what. So, yeah. And everybody knows the Jalen Smith incident. No one needs to relive something like that for a guy who has a chance to be an extremely special player. Right. So, you know, there's that aspect of it. And then more surprising, you know, Kyron Williams opting out, which that was something I had heard was possibly going to happen earlier in the week. And then it was like not decided, but then obviously that's what he went through. And, you know, I'm sure he had a lot of, you know, we know he's an ultimate competitor, probably wanted to play, but I think a lot of people probably gave him the advice to say, don't play because he could get hurt. So, you know, well, just your initial thoughts on that and what you think of, you know, both those guys not being, you know, kind of opting out of the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, I think given what the decision Kyron made, then it kind of seems obvious what Kyle would have done, even if he had played the whole season. And it makes sense, right? Like they both, I mean, Kyron especially, let's just focus on that decision. Like he went through the whole season. Obviously at running back, right? Like he's getting banged up, you know, and it's not just carrying the ball, but in pass blocking as well. They used him as a receiver. So, you know, there's so much work on the workload that he put on his body. And as a running back, like you need to be fresh. And now that you get to, you know, the end of the season where you played all year and, you know, you're playing in a bowl game that, you know, the way that college football is set up now, it doesn't matter. And he's at the brink where it's like, why risk, you know, you have one game left and he gave all he could for the team to, you know, see if they could make the playoffs, and it didn't work out. And so it makes sense that he would say, you know what, I put together my body of work. I'm going to go move on to the next level. And with Kyle, I was starting to feel like even with the playoff possibility, I was starting to get, I don't want to say concerned, but I was wondering, like he'd gone so long without playing, without really working out. Right. So we saw him kind of limping around like he was very ginger. And you can't just take 6-7 weeks off from running around and playing the sport to now I'm playing at the highest level possible. And I think that, you know, Matt had some intel that, you know, while he was going to give it a shot in the playoff game, he was definitely going to do that. Like he probably would have been on a pitch count, because you just can't ramp up your body like that. So, you know, that makes sense. Obviously, two of the best that ever put on a Notre Dame uniform. It's sad to see them go, but at the same time, like, you know, we're going to make a transition here. You know, not just us, but really the fans and everything, just in the analysis to the recruiting class that's going to come next week. And, you know, when these guys sign, we're going to talk about them like this is what they could be. And you always talk about upside, and what Kyron and Kyle became is basically exactly what you would want to see from those guys. They gave us everything they could. They represented the university well. They represented the team well, captains, everything. Just no one has a negative thing to say about those guys. So, you know, congratulations to them. And, you know, can't wait to see what's next.
Yeah, I think that's the way to look at it too. Like these guys should be celebrated, right? And
Yeah.
I understand there's a lot of like old school way of thinking of like, oh man, I would have been out there. These guys are captains and whatnot. But I mean, it's just not a realistic way to think of that, especially when there's potentially millions of dollars on the line for both these guys. And it's the first thing I thought of is if that was my kid or my brother or whoever and it was in that position, I would recommend, I would tell them not to play. Like I just don't think it's a smart thing to do in a time when there's nothing on the line. There really is nothing on the line, right?
Yeah.
And while it might seem important to every Notre Dame fan who's out there like, I really want to finish 12-1 and we can finish, like I saw someone's like, oh, they can finish in the top 3. Like, I mean, honestly, like you can't finish number 1. So it's nice to say you can finish 3rd, but that's for the fans. That's not for those guys and what they're trying to accomplish there. So I totally get that. And I think what you said about Kyle, like kind of ramping it up, like that's when guys get hurt when they come back.
Like he's actually putting himself in danger by trying to ramp up. Like it would be irresponsible almost.
Yeah. And I think the other thing with Kyron is there was at least 2 or 3 times this year where, every Notre Dame fan watching him held their breath, thought, oh, wow. It looked like he maybe hyperextended his knee on the sideline. I think that was maybe can't remember if it was a North Carolina game or a USC game. It looked bad, right? It looked bad. But then all of a sudden he's out there later on. He did the one game where he, went head over heels, flipped, right? And it was an amazing athletic accomplishment, but honestly, it could have been really, really bad. And with his style, he's not going to be a guy who, checks out of bounds or slides down and avoids contact. Like that's just not who he is. So I think it was the right decision for both those guys. I hope that, Notre Dame fans respect it. I understand, there's going to be some people who don't like it, but like you said, you have to look at, these guys and what they've done in totality. And that's kind of the next way I want to lead into it was, Kyle Hamilton, obviously he only got to play half this year, right? And then last year he played on like a bad ankle pretty much the whole year. He hurt his ankle in the first game. But if you look at like what he put together, I tweeted out earlier, he had, 32 and a half, havoc plays, 31 games, human eraser back there, does whatever they need, like cover a slot, cover a tight end, lock it up, make big plays when you need it, did everything. And I can honestly say by far, he's the best safety that I've ever seen play in a Notre Dame uniform. I can't even think like Jeff Burris was when I was originally getting into Notre Dame football, and he was a great player. And certainly ended up being a pretty good cornerback when he was a first round pick, right? But I mean, I bet if you looked at his overall game and all that, you compared it to Kyle Hamilton, like there isn't, because only one guy is 6'4", 220 and like this. And I understand it's a different era, but I think he has to be the best safety that they had, certainly the best of the Brian Kelly era. And obviously Harron Smith played in the Brian Kelly era and was fantastic. But I mean, obviously I know I'm talking to someone who's biased. You're obviously someone who's, big Kyle Hamilton supporter, but I just really think that, appreciate what he did, because he really was one of the best to ever play for Notre Dame. And that's, I think eventually it'll be remembered that way.
Right. And it's like, it's that conversation that people have, like, it's more, this is like a golf thing. I think about it, but like Tiger Woods versus Jack Nicklaus, right? Where it's like, you look at what Tiger could do, and he never caught Jack as far as total majors won or anything like that. But you just look at what Tiger could do on the golf course, and it's like that's the best player ever. And that's just the way it is. And I think people look at, and for me, that's how I think about Kyle. It's like, look, the way it worked out with his injuries, especially this year, and mostly I feel bad for him just because he's a captain. Right. And you don't want because
nobody wants to go out like that.
Everyone knows this is last year. Right. And so he knows that, and he's a captain. It's like, you want to be out there playing, right? You want to be out there representing your team as a captain. And he didn't get to do that. Like during the last, 6 weeks or whatever, when everyone's talking about, you know, he's thinking about, he has to think about this selfishly. Like, no, like selfishly, he wants to play, right? And but
he couldn't play. He couldn't play.
Practically, you can't. And so I felt bad for him on that front. But yeah, you're right. Like there's nothing like him. And that's, this is when like the whole my kind of shtick with Kyle started, was when you watch his film and you think like, oh, okay, he's a low 3-star. What am I going to see on this tape? And then you look at the tape and he has all the skills that you want and then some, and you think, what's the problem here? Like, why is he not like a 5-star player? And I think, he again took those raw skills and then turned it into a fantastic player where, I mean, look, he's a safety and he's in the top 5 of every mock draft you can find.
Yeah.
Sometimes the top 3, top 2, top 1. So
you just don't see many safeties.
No, you don't.
No,
you just don't. Yeah.
And then in terms of Kyron Williams, I think it's hard to compare him over time. Just kind of like it's hard to compare Kyle Hamilton over time because, he's like this evolved athlete compared to guys, many years ago. And I think if you just said Kyron Williams and you just said, say, Reggie Brooks or Ricky Waters, like guys who were like just great backs during the Lou Holtz era, right? So like modern era, technically, but like the game is so different. The offenses are so different. What they, are asked to do are so different. So I think the way that I will remember Kyron Williams is obviously just like a tremendous tackle breaker, effort, just all around stud guy. You could do it all. But I think because of that, that part of it where he all around, you could do it all. And the guy that I thought you compare it to, and this is, obviously a recent comparison because it's LSU, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but like a better version of that, who was just a first round pick. And I don't know if Kyron's going to be first round pick. It obviously hasn't really worked out that, first round value for Edwards-Helaire. But I mean, I guarantee this guy, wherever he goes, I mean, he's going to be a player in the NFL and be a really good one. And the way I see him is I think he's the best modern back that Notre Dame has had. And obviously that's only really maybe looking at, I'd say, the last 15, 20 years. But there, I can't find a guy who could do all the things that he could do. And it's not that, Josh Adams, fantastic, obviously, and Dexter Williams had just special burst. And I think you can look at different, CJ Prosise, just, fantastic athlete, great receiver, like all of these things. Obviously, it was a brief glimpse with him at running back, but still, he was special. And you can look at, guys that even like a Darius Walker and the totality of what he did. And obviously, he wasn't the most special athlete, but like, I would say he's maybe the most like Kyron in terms of like being an all around type of back. And obviously just having the instincts and all that kind of stuff too, the patience. But I think if you compared them side by side, I don't think there is a comparison. I think Kyron Williams is just that much better. So, I looked at, cause I wanted to see like where, he's at back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. I wanted to see where he stood in terms of like, Notre Dame rushing. And obviously you only have 2 years, even when you have back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons, he's not in the top 10 all time, right? Because there's going to be guys who 3-4 years, they have more cumulative yards, but I just can't think of a guy who was better recently. And probably in addition to that, kind of took over the moment and was just special in big games. And obviously that Clemson game stands out, but I just think that they're as good as Chris Tyree and Logan Diggs and Estime and, JD Price and, and everyone who follows after, like, it's going to be hard to do that. And maybe they will, right? Maybe Notre Dame will be this factory where they're always producing these kind of guys. But I just think Kyron Williams, no matter what happens after him, he's in his own special category to me.
Yeah. And I think when you think about Kyron, like I feel like he has like a little bit of everybody in his game. It's like you match him up against like anyone you could name, right? So whether it's like Theo, like Darius Walker is like a good example of like, so Darius and him, I think they're about the same kind of explosiveness. And it's actually funny because Darius Walker is actually a lot faster than I think people remember. And I looked this up on like kind of a whim one time. I was having a discussion with some people about like how fast he actually was. And he ran like a 4.57, right? Like faster than Dexter did. Right. But it's just like the nature of the offense and the way that he played. And it's just like, so he never broke those big runs. And also like Darius he was very smart in that he knew he was going to be used up. So he was like a duck out of bounds guy. And he was like, I know how to preserve my body kind of guy. Yeah. Kyron is not like that. Like, and Kyron should have been, or I don't want to say should have been, you would have understood if he was, but he wasn't. He was always a lower the shoulder guy. He was always I'm going to fight for extra yards. And that's what, I mean, everybody loves that about Kyron. And I think that Kyron immediately became a fan favorite against Duke in 2020, whereas like you watch him play and you're just like, man, I'm going to love watching this guy, because anyone loves watching someone who plays with passion like that and plays the game with so much happiness and joy, and then shares that joy with his teammates. It's infectious, right? It's infectious for the team. It's infectious for fans. It's infectious for everyone. Like, what's his weakness? Right? Maybe a 1/10 of a second in the 40, but beyond that, and it didn't prevent him from breaking big plays, right? No. He had the 65-yarder against Clemson. He had the 91-yarder against like North Carolina. Like this 91-yard touchdown, right?
You score a 91-yard touchdown in college football, you're pretty fast. Like
right. And maybe he'll go to the combine and he won't run like in the 4.4s or whatever. But the fact of the matter is like he broke big plays. And
if he's sub 4.6, that's all that matters, I think, because they just put the film on. Right.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe if we're creating a player like in Madden or something, we'd create Kyron like a little bit faster, but in practicality,
a little bit faster, a little bit bigger, but just as a pure football player, there's just not many that can match up.
So in practicality, he has everything you want. So it's like, it's one of those things. It's just the quintessential, like, don't cry that it's over, like smile because it happened kind of guy. Like, it's just for both of them, really. So it's like, it's a bittersweet day, but you're happy for them. And it just makes sense, right? Like, all right, like go kill it in the NFL. Can't wait to watch you.
Yeah. Perfect way to cap that off. And I think we'll just go real quick just into kind of what it means for Oklahoma State. Won't get really deep dive into Oklahoma State or anything like that right now. We'll talk about more of that next week. But in terms of Kyle, I mean, we've seen it the last 6 weeks, and we've seen like kind of Ramon Henderson play this big role, Watts get involved more. So I don't think there's going to be that much of a change. And if you look at where Oklahoma State is, they don't have like a matchup guy. They don't have a matchup tight end. They don't have a matchup slot guy that, where you're like, oh man, they really wish Kyle Hamilton was here. Mm-hmm. I'm obviously you want Kyle Hamilton in any game you play, but I think they'll be fine without him, and this isn't a game where I think if it was like Ohio State and they were going into it, I'd say, well, that would be a lot bigger problem. Right.
Right. Oh yeah.
And I think on offense, Notre Dame's deep at the running back spot. Are you going to replace we just raved about Kyron Williams and what a player he was. Are you going to be able to replace? No, you're not going to be able to replace exactly that. And, there's going to be a time where, it's 3rd and 2 and someone gets hit in the backfield and they stay hit. And that would be a play where Kyron maybe sneaks out of that and all of a sudden gets an 8-yard gain or something. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's the value in Kyron Williams. So, you're going to lose that. You're going to miss that. But I think Chris Tyree, end of the year, especially, looked like he was kind of back to kind of the guy he was, the athlete he was after, having the turf toe issue. Obviously he's got more time off now with this too. And you got Logan Diggs, who's going to have a bigger role. I think in this game, I think you might see Sibo in this game because in pass pro, and I think Tyree obviously has become a better pass protection guy. They don't have Kyron there. They play 21 personnel. Sibo might be the guy who's in there to block, right? And that's the way they might handle it. Tyree might be out in the slot. Let's see how comfortable they feel with Diggs. And obviously Estemi is the guy that they could play as well. But I think the real interesting thing is because when they lost Avery Davis, and they went, and that's what they did essentially on third downs, more 21 personnel, more Kyron out wide in the slot, doing things like stack release stuff, trying to get him open, get him in one-on-one situations. And now, are they going to do that same thing with Tyree? Is that going to be Lorenzo Styles is going to get a little bit more shine there? I mean, they still have obviously Michael Mayer and Kevin Austin, and I think they're going to be fine, right? But obviously in this game, you're playing against a great defense. It would help to have kind of, some of those like 3rd and 5s, they're going to matter in this game. So that would be the thing I watch. Is there anything else like you want to add to that, like in terms of what you?
Yeah, I think for Kyron, I think I'm most like, what does it look like without his spirit out there? I guess like there's so much, like I said before, he brings so much energy. Like they can, it's one thing to replace the production. It's another thing to replace like you said, like that 3rd and 3 or that 3rd and 2, where it's like, it's like Kyron will get the ball and he'll make a play, even if there's someone in the backfield, right? Like we saw this against, like I went to the USC game and this happened early where they ran a play. It might have been inside zone or maybe it was a power play, but either way, the corner crashed and Avery Davis didn't get there in time. And so he meets Kyron in the backfield and Kyron just makes a spin, gets upfield and he gets 4 yards, right? And it's like, it's not a huge game, but it's a first down and the drive continues. They score a touchdown. It's stuff like that, right? Like it's just situational, like, I want Kyron back there. It's an interesting point about SIBO because they've been using Kyron a lot in the slot because of the fact that, they've lost so many receivers. So are they going to put Chris Tyree out there? And if they do they trust Logan Diggs in the pass protection role, right? So if they're going to be, I guess that would be 12 personnel. Yeah.
Or 20 or 21.
Or 21. Yeah. So they're going to be 21, right? And they can only have Mayer out there. They always have Mayer out there.
Yeah, he'll always be out there.
Right. So he'll be behind that. And it's like, if they do, like, do you want Diggs out there with Tyree? Like you said, and I could see SIBO getting like a pass protection role, like you said. And the thing with Kyle too, like obviously you miss him, but at the same time, they've had 6 games of this, right? And I think with Ramon Henderson and Xavier Watts and I think things are going really well with DJ Brown and Houston Griffith. Like Henderson and Watts have been a revelation. It kind of changes the way like everyone feels about the position going forward, just Definitely. Because it's like they were freshmen, right? Because of COVID. So it's like, it's just, and I would say to everybody listening, like when you think about the safety position, think about like, how would we feel if Watts and Henderson were freshmen this year? Right. And those were true freshmen. So they had true freshman eligibility. So it's like, we would think, wow, like the safety position actually is like super bright. And I kind of do feel like that now.
Yeah.
Especially with Walters and Kari Gee and, whoever else they can move in. So it's more about for Kyle, it's just, they do what they've been doing. And then for Kyron, it'll be just, how do you replace that kind of spirit of him, right? Just the aura and the personality, because the talent is there, but we just got to see it.
We were going to talk defensive backs. It's recruiting today, but since we didn't know that was going to happen there, we'll just stick to Billy Schrauth and we'll go with that. So Notre Dame landed commitment today, 2022 Wisconsin offensive lineman Billy Schrauth. Obviously it was a battle with Wisconsin the whole way. Wisconsin, that they're the one team, if you look at O-line wise, especially in the Midwest, they could go toe to toe and say they're kind of O-line U as well, right? And what they've done there. And they had 3, really highly rated guys there from the state of Wisconsin. Notre Dame was offered all 3. Carson Hinsman weren't really, they decided they want to take Ashton Craig instead. When I like Craig a lot. I think that was actually a good move. And then, Joe Brunner's the other guy. He committed early to Wisconsin, but Billy Schrauth, Matt Freeman will tell you, Christian McCollum will tell you, like, there were inklings he was going to commit to Notre Dame like 18 months ago. Like this was a long time coming. And obviously there was like, oh, well, now he's going to Wisconsin. And then why is he committed to Notre Dame yet? I don't understand. And there was a lot of that going on, but really, who cares? They won him in the end. Obviously, Tommy Rees did a great job closing him out. You give credit to a guy like Jeff Quinn too, who's obviously not really part of the closing out process here, because his status is uncertain right now. But he did put in a lot of work that went into it too. So Rees obviously did a fantastic job. Obviously, Marcus Freeman getting in there too and keeping him as head coach and elevating him head coach. That's a big deal. But I think he's a really good prospect. A bit raw. The type of offense that he runs, it's not like, it's a run heavy offense. There's a lot of this high school football is run heavy. So you don't get to see him in pass pro very often, but certainly has all the traits that you would want there. Like a guy who projects to guard, could play tackle, very athletic, really, really good. I see some people comparing him, saying like, oh, this guy could be the next Quentin Nelson. Slow down. Like, you can't just throw out names here. It's just like saying this guy's the next Kyle Hamilton. Well, the guy better be like elite. And I think Billy Stroud has a chance to be a really good guard, potential multi-year starter, really, really high quality player. But I mean, Quentin Nelson was a different animal. Like, he came in, he was like 315 and benched 225 like 30 times, and was just a monster, and also had crazy flexibility and whatever. Like, probably could have started as a true freshman. I don't think Billy Stroud is on that level, but certainly I think what they've done with the offensive line in this class and where they're kind of going with it, I think he has a chance to be a really, really good player for them.
Right. And I think that people get like, you always want to like compare players, right? And it's like Billy Stroud and all these other things, and he's going to be like Quentin Nelson or whatever. I think the fact of the matter is like, he's a good prospect. You don't know what these guys are going to turn into, right? Like, look at Joel. Like, like, no one knew what he was going to be, and no one would have said he's going to be the next, great tackle, right? It's like, maybe, right? And so
certainly not as a freshman.
Right, exactly.
No one is projecting
and now you look at him and you think, oh, like, he's a 3-year player or whatever, or maybe. The point is, it's like he's going to be an All-American first round pick, right?
Yeah.
So you don't know. I think that when I think of Stroud, I just think of like, he exhibits all the traits that you look for, right? He's a good athlete. He's a two-way player. He plays with tenacity. He plays with nastiness. He's a guard, right? So which they've got a ton of tackles. If you're like, you need a guard, you need an interior player. They got him in that to go along with Ashton Craig. And to me, when I think of him, it's just like another, quality offensive lineman. I mean, so I was looking at it. I think in the last 2 classes, you're looking at 10 linemen. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
And you have 8 4-stars. I think it was 6 in the top 200. And one of those like does not include Joel.
Yeah.
It's just an incredible haul of talent at that position. And, so many people have given Jeff Quinn a hard time for so many things. And, I don't really want to litigate, Jeff Quinn, the coach, or anything like that. But at the same time, like, he has, if he is not going to be the coach, whoever comes in to coach these guys is going to have
set up for success.
It's just such a stacked roster to work with. And that is something that Jeff Quinn did not have, frankly. So, kudos to him for that. It's a great land. Apparently Tommy Rees was very instrumental in this. Great job by him getting this locked up. And, it's just another one of the best offensive line classes in the country.
Yeah. And I think the point you made about them kind of like stacking the classes on top of each other, because really, you never know what's going to happen with injuries. You never know what's going to happen with certain guys' development, or some guys might bolt. It happens, right? And you just never know, especially in this day and age. But when you recruit well enough and you get this many guys, you're going to find a good line out of this. You're going to find a really, really good line, and, should be one of the best lines in the country going forward. And and you know what? And another thing with Jeff Quinn, you have to say too, is to be able to say, evaluate that Joe Alt evaluation is huge. That's huge. And obviously there's a lot of projection going there. He had to gain a lot of weight there. And I doubt he even thought that Joe Alt was going to be this ready this soon. But it's an absolutely home run. It's similar to like a Marist Leofo on defense, right? Where obviously we didn't get to see him this year, but I think when people get to see him, they're going to be like, why the heck was this kid a 3-star? And obviously a lot of it had to do with physical development too, and that is what happens with a lot of these guys. So I think it's important to note too that like as good as the defense is recruited, and we're going to get into way deeper into that next week, but the offense is recruited pretty well too, and they're really set up for success, and obviously have a great young freshman class too. So all right, man. Well, I think that was the first show. We're working out the kinks with some of the stuff, the original, what can you do?
Figured out. We'll get it
figured out. But I mean, to be honest, I don't think we need to do unless we're going to do something where we're going to take questions, and this wasn't meant to take questions anyway. So we didn't need to do it live anyways. So, we recorded this, this is the first show. We're calling it Hidden Hustle by, Greg, he suggested it. Great name. Obviously the man, Matt Freeman, come up with a cool graphic for that too. So, yeah, man, I'm just excited that we're going to get to work together. Excited we're going to do more of this and more of this stuff, and excited to talk ball with you. And yeah, man, I'm excited about, how the Irish are going to finish this class too.
Yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be awesome. Can't wait.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time.